Welcome to the Resonate podcast with Aideen. I'm Aideen Riada, and my guest today is Regyna Curtis. Welcome, Regina.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. You've got such an interesting way of working. Wait till the listeners get to find out how you can help them align their energies with the natural cycles of their life. But before we do that, let me tell everyone a little bit more about your background.
Wonderful.
Regyna Curtis is a soul mentor for passionate entrepreneurs. An innovative leader in the corporate world, academia, and entrepreneurship, Regina is an expert at interpreting patterns and trends to help her clients to overcome challenges and align strategies with their natural energies. In addition to being a best selling author, she is a sought after speaker and workshop facilitator on using astrology to align with the wisdom of your personal seasons. Tell me, Regina, how did you find confidence in your voice to start working with people in this way?
Yeah, thank you. Um, so honestly, it really has been a process um, of really just being a process, like sitting with the process of it. So for me, it's really important for me to be able to understand and embody something through experimentation in my own world. And once I understand something, then I share it and I can share it with confidence and I can share it with joy. So my journey with astrology and learning about my personal seasons and my personal energy has been pretty much a lifelong journey. I started really working intentionally with astrology as a tool for myself in 2004. And then in about 2017 is when I started to bring that into my work. So it's been this process of kind of like a slow experimentation, try it out, share it a little bit, bring it back in, try it some more. And now it's something that I spend all day, every day talking about and working with people, and I love it.
I really love how following that kind of process, which is completely unique to you, like you weren't
Mhm.
following anyone else's blueprint or anybody's idea of what you should have been doing. It was really an internally guided process, and that has actually seemed to have created a very unique business for
Mm.
you, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it is one of my core values that when I am working with someone, that the tools that I share, the information that I share, the way we work together, it really is a collaboration and it is honoring their ways of their natural ways of knowing and being, their energy, as well as my own. And I think that is a little bit different than I've experienced in a lot of other types of partnerships or mentorships, where it's like, I have this knowledge and I'm going to share it with you. I do have knowledge that I'm going to share with you, and then I'm going to listen and we're going to apply it in a very specific and unique way for you.
Hmm. I love that it's about empowering people to also tune into that own natural energy of their own, because when we are mindful, we can certainly
Mhm.
sense what it is will fit for us today. Like, what do I need? Like, do I have the energy to do this or to do that? And sometimes we have to push ourselves to do things we're uncomfortable with.
True.
I know that as well. But sometimes we're being called to rest,
Yes.
and we have to learn to interpret that message from our own bodies, or from, sometimes our environment will help us know. Like my husband might say, Aideen, go and rest, because I won't think of it myself.
Yes.
So yeah, so you help people to tune into their own natural energies.
Absolutely, yes. And to cultivate a set of tools that are going to help you when you have that recognition. So, everything that we do, there's a relationship between internal and external energies, and so there are those external indicators, like your partner. My partner will say, "I think you need some yoga," and I know exactly what that means. And she's generally right. I do need some yoga when she tells me that. Um, And so those are external indicators or information. We also have internal indicators and information, and both have a role, both have a purpose. And when we can be attuned to both of those and know how to support ourselves and what tools to bring in, regardless if the indicator comes from the external or the internal, then that is sustainable, right? That is nourished and supported.
Hmm. And you developed your system through astrology. Would you like to explain to people how astrology can help us on a day to day basis?
I can, yes. I did develop it through astrology. However, I use astrology in a very different way. I definitely use it as a tool, and it is a essentially it's a calendar. I like to say, astrology at its essence is a calendar that helps you tap into and work with your internal cycle of development, right? Your energetic cycles. And so astrology was developed a long, long time ago, right? And the first people who made a calendar, who recorded a calendar that we know of, were the ancient Egyptians. And then the Babylonians actually took that and added more information to it. And this is where the basis of the astrology that we use today has come from. And so that's exactly what it is. It's a calendar. It is over thousands of years, people have noticed that is this rhythm, there's a pattern that is present, and then have observed that and noted it, and then taken it to the next level. Oh, when this pattern happens, this information happens, or these themes are present, or this type of energy, this type of emotion or way of being seems to be really prevalent here. And so what that is doing, it's those external indicators that I was talking about, right? Just like when your husband says, Aideen, you need to rest, it may be the same, even though it's not a voice of somebody that you know coming and saying that to you. Energetically, those indicators are present and you may feel them more in your internal energy. So you can use this calendar to help you recognize those periods of time and those themes and those energies before you get to that point where it's like, oh, I need to rest, right? You can have some knowledge about it. So I like to relate it to a weather report. If you are going to go spend a day outside, you probably will look at the weather report. What do I need to wear? What kind of tools do I need to bring with me? Is it going to be windy? Do I want to wear my hair up? Do I need an umbrella? All of those things, right? And it doesn't say that, if it's raining or snowing or whatever it may be, that you can't do that activity. But it's giving you information so that you can be prepared for the environment you're walking into. And that's what astrology can do for you too.
That's yeah, yeah, that's amazing because we can be so unprepared at times. And I know
Hmm.
that you work with the seasons as well within that
Yes.
calendar. And I thought that was fascinating because everybody understands, well, depending on where they live in the world, their
Yeah,
seasons may be different, but we understand that winter has a different energy to summer. So, how do you relate the
exactly.
seasons to an astrology chart?
Yeah, I love talking about this. So, especially after, we're recording this a little before it's actually going to come out, but right after the new year, right? Like when the new year happens and it turns, it just turned to 2024. When that happens, there's all this energy towards it's a new year, new beginnings, all this energy towards like we need to start new things. But energetically, the seasons, we're actually in the middle of winter. And winter is a slower energy. It's not actually a time for starting new things, it's a time for dreaming into new things. Yes, not energetically. The motivation, the energy is generally not there to actually put them in place because we need to integrate all that we've just processed and all that we've just experienced. So, when spring rolls around, and I'm talking specifically more so to the northern hemisphere at this point, and I'll talk about what that looks like with southern hemisphere in a moment if we have time. But um, so in the spring, that's when things emerge. Life begins to wake up and come out of its shell, and come the buds start to open and things start to emerge. And that's when the energy to actually put things into place happens. So there is this natural cycle of the seasons, regardless if you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. It just may be flipped of when those things happen outside in nature, right? Internally, we have the same cycle. We go through the same four seasons. You just may not do it in the same cadence or pace or timing as what's happening outside in the external world. Yet, those are energies that everyone is familiar with from a very young age. So, when I say, oh, you're in your spring season, or you're in your fall season, or your winter season, there's already a general resonance with what that energy is. There's something tangible to tie it to. But if I were to say, oh, you're in Libra season or Scorpio, or your moon is in Sagittarius and squaring your ascendant in Aries, like, which those things wouldn't happen. But anyway,
Well, I
that
those
lane.
that's just jargon, and I would not understand it anyway.
Exactly, right? So those words, and that's why I just threw a bunch of words out there, because that's what they are. They're just words. They don't have meaning until you can resonate with it, you can apply it, you have something tangible to touch. And the seasons are, so everybody has a relationship with that in some way.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we have done a little bit of work on where my seasons sit, and I've
Mhm.
also been meditating a lot on a seed being, sown, a seed maybe learning to reach to the sky, to bud, to open up the bud, to close the blossom, to let
Yeah.
go. Like we're all in cycles of starting and finishing things. And every time we start something new, something has to be let go of. Like we
Of
just don't have
course. Yeah.
capacity to keep adding, 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 adding. And those periods of time where we let go of things can be so hard. So when you explain to me that I have different phases of my year that are good for sowing seeds, that are good for harvesting, that are good for letting go,
Mhm.
that actually was a really beautiful way for my meditation on sowing seeds to kind of evolve and to have more nuance. So I'm very excited to apply what you're suggesting. And I love how, yes, the use of the seasons as descriptors is so accessible to people.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal what you're doing. This is like so
Mhm.
unique, and your voice is so in the right place and so aligned. But I know that hasn't
Thank
always
you.
been the case for you. Was there a particular moment in your life where you realized, hang on a second, my voice needs to change here. I'm not quite expressing myself the way that it feels that I am on the inside.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for, the beautiful words you just said about my work. And it is very much aligned. It feels so clear and so correct, so aligned for me. Um, and with that being said, that wasn't always the case. Not that this work wasn't aligned, but that I didn't feel so clear or so confident in sharing my voice. And I can relate back to when I was in kindergarten. Is when I would say that I actually really had an experience where I felt like my voice was it's not that it was taken from me, but it was squashed. And I learned to keep my voice quiet. So I have always been an intuitive being. I've seen the world in a very different way than a lot of the people around me. I see things on a deeper level. I can pick up on things that I'm not supposed to see necessarily, especially as a kid. I knew things that I hadn't been told. Could I could pick up on energies of things happening that were not shared with me, and I didn't know the difference at that point of how to determine what was what. And I also was a very vibrant, vivacious learner. I always have been. I just consume information. When I get excited about something, I'm interested in something, I can just, I eat it. Like I say sometimes, like I just eat through books, or I just eat information until it's like settled in me. I'm like, okay, I've got the level that I needed. And so I learned to read before the time that I ever went to school. I had an older sister. She taught me how to read when I was about 3 years old. And so when I went to kindergarten, I could read books, and people were just learning the alphabet. And I remember very clearly going to my kindergarten. There was like a interview that you would go to, and they would place you depending, like, I don't know, there was some kind of test that you had to do so they could tell where you were. And I was so excited. I'd been waiting for years to go to school. I was ready. It was like my favorite game to play with my sister. She would teach me things, and I thought school was going to be like that. Um, I got to my kindergarten interview, and I remember this one point where I had to toss a bean bag and count as high as I could count. And I was like, 120, 121, 100. And the woman was like, how high can you count? And, she was just like bored with it. And I was so excited. Like, I know all these numbers, I know all these things. So, anyway, fast forward to, a couple months into the school year, we're just learning the alphabet. I'm bored to tears. I'm like, all we do is play, and I can play at home. I had three siblings. I could play at home, and I did not want to go to school anymore. I hated it. I remember one day my body would not move, and the bus was outside, and I was being yelled at, like, "Get on the bus! Why aren't you going?" And I was just frozen, and I couldn't make my body move. And I finally just burst into tears, and I was like, "I can't go. I hate it there. I don't want to go anymore." Um, and the result of that was my parents having a conference with the teacher. They told her that I was bored and I needed to be more challenged. They suggested skipping me to the first grade, and my parents thought that was a bad idea because I already was one of the oldest kids in my class. So the result was they gave me homework, and my homework was to write stories about things that I was interested in. So I did, and I got out my Harry Scary dictionary. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's this really fun dictionary. It has all these pictures and it has words with it. And so I was like so excited. I wrote this whole story about oranges. For some reason, I was excited about oranges. Brought it to school, handed it in, so excited. Got accused of cheating. That they said that my mom had written the story for me because no kindergartner had that vocabulary, right? So
Wow.
it immediately shut me down. I went through a series all through elementary school in being like too advanced for certain things, or knowing too much, or like it just kept coming in waves of like, there's no way that you know these things, or you shouldn't know these things, or you're going too fast, it's making other people uncomfortable. Um, and I learned to just stay quiet. I learned to just stop sharing my, all of the things that I was excited about and all of the things that I knew, and to just go in within, right, and experiment on my own and eat those books on, on my own, in my own time. And so I developed this practice of self-development and introspection, and working pardon me, working with these tools on my own because it wasn't safe for me to do it in public. And that's how I learned all these things about astrology.
Yeah. And you learned also that it wasn't safe to be fully you. And that must have
Yeah.
affected how you approached your working life, or like at what point did you start going, "Hey, I'm going to share everything now," because up till, I mean, marketing yourself, like is it like was that a big challenge at the start?
Yes. It was a very big challenge. Um, at what point? So the point was when I couldn't hold it in any longer. It literally was spilling out of me. So, um, for all these years, I think it's really an interesting analogy that I use, and I'm just kind of reflecting on this right now. But the fact that I use like the word consume, right? I consumed information. I would just take it in, take it in, take it in, but I didn't have anywhere for it to go because I didn't feel safe sharing it, right? So I would,
Mhm.
or I would only share it in very small, safe circles, very small, like intimate relationships. Um, but it just, there was so much that I had consumed and had processed and like integrated, but there's always like I couldn't share it. I didn't feel like I could share it. And then in my like in my corporate career and in my, in some of the spaces like I could share certain pieces, but not all of it, right? Like um just like when I was little and I would be told like, "Oh, you that's too much information. You shouldn't know that information. Don't share that," right? Or that's not really things that we tell people. Like I knew when people had died. I knew when people had gotten married. I knew when, like as a young kid and I hadn't been told these things, right? I remember my mom coming to say like, "Oh, I have some news for you." And I was like, "Oh, so and so got married." And she's like, "How do you know these things?" Right? Um and so I found through that reaction, the same reaction when I was in my corporate career, where people would celebrate me for being innovative and being able to come up with new ideas. But then there was a line that I couldn't cross in how creative I could actually be, right? Don't show up in purple hair. Don't, don't be a bleeding heart in meetings in a corporate boardroom where you're trying to like talk about people's emotions. Don't share the things that you intuitively know even though you know something's not going to be a a success, but you don't have any facts to back it up other than your gut feeling, which is by the way like all the time correct. And that's okay, just don't share that, right? Don't tell people that. And so there was this process of like I could share a bit of me here, but not all of me. And so what would happen is I would share that piece and then I would be like, okay, I don't fit here because I didn't fit there. All of me didn't fit there. So then I would go somewhere else, right? So if you look at my resume, there's it's diverse. And it wasn't because I couldn't keep a job or that I, like was scattered. It was because I was constantly trying to find the place where I could be all of me. And it was none of those places. Um, in 2017, I started learning Reiki. And I got this intuitive, had an experience where it was like very clear to me that I needed to go figure out how to use these parts of my being and allow them to be a part of me and not try to hide them or squash them. Um, and through that process, I learned the confidence that I needed because I was with people who understood me. And I really did feel like I could be all of me in that space. And from there, things just expanded and skyrocketed. And it was like this outpouring where if you look at the timeline of my life, it looks like, wow, that was a very short period of time that you went from, you know, being in the corporate world to suddenly being an entrepreneur. And now you have all these things that you've accomplished. It's because it had been simmering under the surface for a very long time. And it was just the confidence that I needed to start sharing it. And as soon as I did, it really resonated with people. It's clear, it's confident, it's aligned. And that is um, very welcome.
I bet.
Yeah.
And, the thing that I'm gleaning from what you're saying, and one thing that I love about, very intelligent people is they may know so much, but they know also how to simplify something
Mhm.
and give people a tool to use that looks like anybody could use it, but you
Right,
know everything behind why you're choosing to call it this. You're giving people access to something that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to access if they went to a regular astrologer.
right.
I
Yeah.
think that's one beautiful thing. It's something that I have a great. That's one of my biggest values is fast tracking people and giving them access to their voice without needing to train their voice like for 8 years, or to give
Mhm.
them access to their intuition faster than I may have grown my intuition. And my mom actually is a guitar teacher, and she simplified her way of teaching the guitar and made it easy for people to
Nice.
within the first 2 weeks play 30 or 40 songs. And
Wow, that's great.
yeah, so I have huge respect for you, Regina,
Oh,
because
thank you.
I see you. I see that
Mm.
you've done something actually genius with your work. But I know that not everybody will get that, how genius it is, because it looks so simple.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And yeah, that is actually really what my goal is. And I think that that time that I spent kind of dipping around through different careers and different things, like it's it's vast, right? Like, it's not that I did a lot of many jobs, but that I went through very different careers, right? Like, I was an elementary art school teacher, and then I was, taught teachers professional development, and then I was doing like consulting in different ways and like very business focus. So very different areas of expertise. But one of the things that I think I gleaned from that, that I gained from that, is that I can speak to a variety of different people. And there is a simplicity, like when I was speaking to a kindergarten classroom, there was a simplicity needed there. And I learned how to do that in a way. And I would actually have parents come in and say, they were like, you speak to my kids in a way that is like they're adults, like the projects that you give them are very advanced and they're excited and they're capable, and all of these things, because it really is just finding, you know you find the pattern, you find the trend, you find that thread of what is actually needed, and then you pull that out, and it's simple, it's clean. Anybody can use it, from a kindergartner to a PhD, whatever, whatever. The information is the same, and it doesn't need to be complicated. So even though I see all the layers, being able to simplify it, that I really just appreciate you saying that, because it is my goal, right? To make it tangible, to make it usable, to make it simple so that anybody can access it. And then if you want to go deep, I will go deep, right? I will go through all the layers and all the things, because I have explored it all and I love having those conversations. But we don't have to start there.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering about this idea of, helping people find their uniqueness. Like, it
Mhm.
sounds like when you were working with the kindergarten kids, you could see something in them. You could see what it was they were curious about, what they'd be passionate about, what they would be willing to invest their time in. And sometimes
Mhm.
as adults, we need that kind of guidance as well. Do
Oh, yeah.
you help your clients a lot with that type of guidance too?
Absolutely. Yes. So in my community that I have, the kind of like top tier level that we have is called Vision Activator. And I love that title because it is really what I help people do. I help them activate their vision of what they are wanting to create. And one of the things that working with your personal seasons helps you do is to get in touch with both that external seasons, this external information, and the internal information. And when you can learn to read that internal information, which is not always visible, sometimes it's felt sense. I actually use the word times. So we receive information from what I call your soul wisdom, right? Your inner knowing, your intuition. You receive it through 5 different channels. TIMES. So there's the thinking channel, the images channel, movement, emotions, and sensory. And so I help you understand how to receive and interpret that information from all those different channels. And the best way to remember that is, sometimes my intuition speaks to me through through words, right? That would be your thinking channel. Sometimes it speaks to me through emotions. So emotions are not something to try to set aside. I mean, there are different ways that are socially appropriate to experience emotions, but emotions are important. They're information coming from our body to help you understand what is happening, right? So anyway, that's a little tidbit for you, so you can use that. So TIMES: thinking, images, movement, emotions, and sensory.
Absolutely, because it's about tuning, it's about noticing stuff, and
Mhm.
not just barreling through. And I know plenty of us are good at the just getting on
We're
with things.
well, we've been very conditioned to do that in our society.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is, yeah, there's a difference between moving through something with intention and pushing through something that is really not the most supportive thing for your body.
Yeah, yeah. Because real success is when your health is respected as well, your relationships are respected as
Yes.
well, and all of that takes presence, I would say is the word, when
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
present to everything that's going on. So I mean, I could keep talking to you all day and all night, but we are getting towards the end of our allotted time for our session today. How would you suggest people get in touch with you, or find out more about the kind of work you're doing?
Absolutely. So, I teach a workshop every month on the 28th of the month, and it rotates what time it is so that it works for all time zones. It's called Charting Your Course, and it is listed on my website. Um, my website is at matri.com. So at matri is the name of my company, and it is two Sanskrit words put together that really mean journey of kindness towards yourself. So that's what that word means if you're curious. And so at matri.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes, the workshop is called Charting Your Course. And then if you're just curious, you're like, I really don't know if this is for me, but I really want to learn more. On my website, there's a page called Connect, and you can just set up a call with me and we can chat about it. I would love to do that.
It's so worth doing. I have my chart of my seasons here beside me. I've printed it off as
Yay.
per my teacher's instructions.
Yes.
So I'm really, I think this applies to so many people that we are more than what meets the eye. And
Yes.
when it comes to my relationship with you, that's exactly what I noticed. It was, okay,
Mm.
Regina, I like her. And then the more I, you made me very curious because you speak about things that other people don't speak about. So my curiosity was piqued. And the more I get to know you, the deeper I'm starting to understand your your contribution
Mm.
to the world and its healing and its alignment with basically light and truth, which I think is
Oh,
really to be true to ourselves. That's if your voice can, express your truth,
yeah.
everything will fall into alignment. So thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the listeners before we sign off?
Yes. Um, so my best advice, especially when it comes to something like intuition, astrology, some of these terms, some people are really comfortable in those realms and are excited to explore. Wonderful. If this is new to you and you are curious, if your curiosity is piqued, like you just said, Aideen, then get curious, right? Stay curious, just take one little step, right? And perhaps that is just kind of reaching out and saying, maybe it's just opening up my website and reading a little bit. Maybe it is reaching out and having a connection. Maybe it is coming to the workshop, right? Maybe it's just kind of going and exploring astrology on your own. So allow yourself to just follow those nudges of your intuition to say, okay, this is something that I'm curious about, follow that, and then take the next one, right? Then the next step, then the next step. Just follow those breadcrumbs and don't try to like consume the whole thing all at once.
Beautiful advice. And remember as well that we are here for you. If
Yes.
you would like my help, or if you'd like Regina's help, or you want to ask a question, we would really welcome that. You can definitely get in touch with us. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Regyna Curtis. I don't know if I can say your business name, at Matry.
At Matri. Yeah,
At
perfect.
Matry. Yeah, it'll all be spelled out in the show notes, everyone. So we look forward to finding out more about you. And I'm just so excited that my listeners have gotten to meet you today.
Oh, thank you. This has been an absolute joy. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you all for being here and listening.
Yeah, thank you to everybody listening. And we look forward to having you listen to another episode of the Resonate podcast in very soon, I hope. Thank you so much. Bye bye.